Hello YouTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizziefaye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth. It is Monday morning, October the 3rd, and I would like to share with you my September wrap-up. Now, I mentioned that it's morning. I don't often get a chance to film in the morning. I've got morning sun coming in through the window here, and every time I get a chance to film in the morning, I think, wow, I should do this more often because I much prefer the lighting. But the reason I'm doing it now, mainly, is because I've got a dentist appointment later this afternoon, and who knows what the state of my face and mouth will be in after that, so I figured I better get this done. This is actually the second time I am attempting to film this video. I did film a version of my wrap-up on Saturday, October the 1st, and I decided to just scratch that and film it again because it was so long and I had to figure out some things that I can cut and edit and make into separate videos. And then also our power was still out. Our electricity was off for 5 hours short of 4 full days, and my hair was unwashed, and I thought, at the time I thought I'll just go ahead and get this filmed, and then when the electricity comes back on, I'll get it uploaded and everything, but no, I just thought, I'm doing this again. So anyway, I had a fantastic reading month. I finished a total of 38 books. Now that counts a couple of really short things, but it also counts a couple of really long things that I finished up. So let me just give you a brief rundown and a summary, and then I'll talk about some of the books. Everything I read for the More Montgomery Challenge, which is something that I'm hosting with Mitzi from Mitzi Reads and Writes, I'm going to include in a different video. I have been saying I want to do a series of related videos about books that are related to Lucy Maud Montgomery and adaptations and things like that. So I'm going to do some videos about what I've been reading and what I plan to read and recommendations and all of that. Hopefully coming this week. I had said that a couple weeks ago, but then we had a hurricane. So let me back that up just a little bit and explain. If you don't know, I'm in Central Florida. Normally, most of the time when we have a hurricane coming through or a tropical storm, we live in the center of the state. And by the time the storm gets to us, it has generally weakened enough that we get a lot of rain and we get some wind and the palm fronds blow down, and that's about it. This was a bigger storm. It was Hurricane Ian, and we did experience a power outage of, like I said, almost 4 full days. Now the storm itself was not as destructive as say Hurricane Charlie in 2004. I had a neighbor who lost a tree. A big tree fell in their living room, basically, and they had to rebuild their house practically. So we didn't have anything like that right here in my neighborhood. A few blocks down, there was a huge tree that was down, but thankfully it did not hit their house. And I think that there were some power lines down because of trees and all of that, and that's why it took so long for the power to come back on. Now, statewide, there were just, a huge amount of power outages and everything, and I think the brunt of the storm was around the Fort Myers area because I believe that's where it made landfall, and the eye passed a little south of us, so we got a lot of the outer bands on the northern side, which is generally the strongest. So anyway, we are very blessed. We're very thankful. We had really the basics that we needed. We had running water, and we had a camp stove. We have a camp stove with propane, and so we were able to heat water and cook and use up most everything in our refrigerator and freezer in time before it spoiled. And we did have some ice the last couple of days, and so that was helpful. And we lost really next to nothing, and we're very thankful. So anyway, if any of you are some of the ones who reached out to me and messaged me, thank you so much for your thoughts and prayers. And we're doing great. And if you are curious about anything, at least in my neck of the woods, I did take a little bit of footage on the morning after, on early Thursday morning, and I will put that at the end of this video. So if you're curious about, what it looked like in my yard and on, our street, then you're welcome to take a look at that. But now let's get back to the wrap up. So I finished a total of 38 titles, 38 books. And just to give you a quick summary, okay, first of all, let me just say, I focused a lot on print books this month, and 17 of the 38 books were books that I read in print. I showed this a couple of times. This was my chart. I finished everything on this chart. Now, towards the last third of the month, I did start some more print books, and I think I started a total of 4, and I finished 2 of those. So 2 print books that I started, I did carry over into October, and I'm, I'm almost to the halfway point of one and past the halfway point of another. So that was great. 2 of the others that I started, I finished. And one was a graphic novel, so that was easy to finish. And the other one was a shorter middle grade book, and I was determined to finish it, so I got those done. And the 2 longer ones I did not finish yet. But I'm super happy with what I got read. So because I've read 17 print books, that left a total of 21 audiobooks. So really, the 21 to 17 ratio for me is really good, because usually I'm a lot heavier on audiobooks than I am print books. Now, I will say that I would have finished more audiobooks if it hadn't been for the hurricane. I was in the middle of 2 books, one on each phone. I have my old phone where I have my daughter's Hoopla account pulled up, and then I could not finish that one because that phone is out of memory and it wouldn't let me download anything before the storm, so I wasn't able to finish that one. And then another one that I was listening to on my own phone also was not downloaded, and so it's fine. I carried over 4 books, 2 in print and 2 audio, and then there was another audio book that I didn't get to start at all, the Secret Garden, which I was going to read for Elizabeth Tyree's Children's Literature Book Club, and I usually end up waiting till the last minute to read whatever the selection is for the month. I'm going to do better in October. I'm going to go ahead and listen to The Secret Garden again. It would be a reread for me. And for October, we're reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So I'm going to get those done earlier in the month this time. I'm not going to keep waiting till the end of the month. Anyway, I'm still super excited about what I got read. So I finished almost everything for all of the readathons that I was doing. I had 2 readathons or reading challenges for September. I pretty much finished those. Really, the 2 print books that I started and didn't finish were for some of the challenges. So I've basically started and or finished everything for all the readathons. The only thing I did not get done for any of the readathons or reading challenges that I was doing for the month was some of the things that I needed to watch. And again, we had a hurricane, and I put it off to the last minute. I did get some watching done, but I didn't get everything done that I had intended to. But the challenges that I participated in, Series September, finished everything. Really, I can check off everything for Series September. Now, one of the print books would have counted for Series September, but I've got something else I could count, so it's fine. But I did start it. And then the other one was the Footloose Readathon that was also just in the month of September. And I finished everything, all of those prompts, except for watching Footloose. And I thought I had an old VHS copy of the original Footloose. Turns out I didn't. But I didn't even think to check until the power was out. And then I just never got around to going to the library to pick up a copy of the new one. And I still want to. I've never seen the newer Footloose. But anyway, I got all the reading prompts done, so I'm excited about that. And then Fall Into Reading Challenge, I pretty much finished. The 2 print books that I'm carrying over, actually no, one of the audiobooks and one of the print books that I started and didn't finish. When I get those done, that finishes the Fall Into Reading Challenge. And that's a 3-month challenge, but I got that done. And then the More Montgomery Challenge, which I'm co-hosting with Mitzi from Mitzi Reads and Writes, I got something done for all of those prompts except for watching an Anne adaptation. And, it's a 3-month challenge also. I about the halfway point of the month, I started thinking, I think I can go ahead and check off the whole challenge board every month. Go ahead and try to complete the challenge 3 times, and I think I'm going to be able to do it. I've read just about everything that has been published by Lucy Maud Montgomery, but this time around, I thought, so much of it is available on audio. In the past, I think I read everything in print, and I'm just enjoying going back and revisiting some of those novels and short stories and things that I've already read in print and or listened to in the past. So I'm going to do a whole separate video about the More Montgomery Challenge. Actually, several videos. I think I already said that earlier. But anyway, so I'm not going to mention much more about that in this video. But let me just go through what I read, kind of break it down by category and genre, and then I will talk about which books counted for what challenges. And then at the end, I'll add in some hurricane aftermath footage, and we'll let that be that. So just to go back now to my summary. My summaries are long, y'all. So 36 books. The shortest book on audio was Enola Homes and the Boy in Buttons, and that was a 30-minute audiobook, or 34 minutes, something like that. And then my shortest print book was the book of Galatians in the Bible. And I also read another book of the Bible, and I'm counting both of those on Goodreads as separate books, even though I have the Bible as a whole on my Goodreads, because Oshina from Oshina Gotta Read 'Em All has started kind of a Bible reading book club, and in August they read the book of Galatians, and then in September they read the book of John, and I had kind of missed out on the whole announcement and everything in August, so I went ahead and just picked up and read Galatians. It's 5 pages in my Bible. I think it's 5 chapters, and then, or maybe not even. Then I've also read the book of John, which is 21 chapters, and in my Bible it's about 29 pages for the book of John. So I did count those in my 38 book total because I was reading them for a reading challenge. And then the longest books that I read, there was kind of a 3-way tie for the longest audiobook. And all of these books are roughly between 400 to 420 pages. Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker, I also listened to for the BookTube Spin. And then the first 2 books in the Gresham Chronicles by Lawana Blackwell, which I'll talk about when I get to historical fiction. And then the longest print book that I finished is The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. Now, I know I've been reading on this since the month of January, but I read the last 445 pages in the month of September, making it still the longest book, or the most pages in any one book that I read in print for the month. And I'm so excited to get this done. This book is epic, and I can't wait to watch the movie adaptation now. And, this was great. Now, I will say, I think of all the books I've ever read in my life, this is the worst villain. I should say best worst villain, because he's the best at being the worst. He's despicable. Oh my goodness. Just horrendous. But I'm so glad to get that done. And I want to thank my brother for recommending that book to me. So now I'm ready to tackle book 2. Felicia, if you're watching this, are we going to try for another read along next year? Or are we just going to just read it? And, honestly, if anyone wants to tag along and read with us, we still have our Voxer group. You're welcome to join. And I think a couple of people, at least one person joined after they had already read the book, and a couple of others joined who were curious about it, and I don't know if they've read it or not. But anyway, we're straggling. It turned out to be kind of a failed read-along, but everybody who has finished the book has really enjoyed it. So it's barbaric for sure, but it's a fantastic book. And I am looking forward to book 2. At least now I know what I'm getting myself into. I went into this totally blind. I had no idea what it was about or anything. And now I have an inkling. Okay, so I read a total in print of 88.5 pages per day in the month of September, which is really for me more. I think that's a lot more than my average. Now, I probably will scale back down a little bit in the month of October because I did spend a good portion of my day, several hours every morning reading, and then I would try to read a little more at night. And, there were times that I read a lot more. Some days I read more than other days. There were a couple of days where I barely got my devotional read, and that was it. So, it just kind of ebbs and flows depending on the day, but I'm still really happy with what I got done. And having this chart just helped me to stay on track because let's say, I get up in the morning and I remember that, yesterday I hardly read out of any of my books. Then I kind of know that I'm going to have to read a little bit more over the next day or two to sort of catch back up to where I need to be. And it just helped me so much to have this chart. Now, am I going to do another chart this month? Probably not, because I'm going to scale back a little bit. I'm reading the 2 that I read, or that I started, near the end of the month, and I have started 2 more, and one is a devotional book, and then one other cozy mystery, and I may start 1 or 2 others, but I'm going to keep it to 4 or 5 total print books at a time because I just need to not overwhelm myself so much. I don't want to burn myself out. Not that I would, but I think I just need to ease back just a little bit. All right, so I am rambling. I don't even know. I'm already at almost 20 minutes, and I haven't even hardly shown you a book. But maybe at this point I will have edited some of this out. Okay, so I need to get back to what I'm doing here. Oh, so categories. I had 10 books that were Lucy Maud Montgomery related, either by her or related to her or Anna Green Gables or whatever. So I'm going to do those on a separate video. I had 9 books that were nonfiction, and that includes the 2 books of the Bible. I had 8 mystery books and 6 historical fiction books and 3 middle grade books and 2 other fiction. Now, I had a couple books that could go in a couple of different categories, and I can't even remember now at this point where I stuck them. I think I stuck them with mystery. And so I'll just start with those because these are historical and they're middle grade and they're mysteries. So they could go in 3 different categories. But we'll just start with mysteries. And I read 2 or listened to 2 of the Enola Homes books. I talked about these in my mid-month September wrap-up, and so I don't need to go into too much detail anymore, but this is book 7, Enola Homes and the Black Barouche. It was very good. I really enjoyed it. I also listened to 6.5, Enola Homes and the Boy in Buttons, which was, like I said, about 30 to 34 minutes long on audio in regular speed, and that was my shortest audiobook for the month. So let's talk about the other mysteries. I think I also talked about these in my mid-month wrap-up, so I don't need to tell you too much more about these. But the first 3 books in the Allie Reynolds series by J.A. Jantz, Edge of Evil is the first one. Web of Evil, I believe, is the second one, and Hand of Evil is the third one. I did not get the 4th one read. I do have it checked out from the library. I was listening to, Hoopla has the first one, and then the rest of them are on Scribd. But after I listened to 2 of them on Scribd, I thought, I better stop and listen to the other stuff I need to on Scribd, before it cuts me off. So interesting thing about Scribd, this had happened to me once before where I really needed to listen to something, I think for book club, and when I pulled it up on Scribd, it said not available until the beginning of the next month. And I was like, no. So it offered me a preview. And I thought, well, I'll at least listen to the preview. So I listened to the preview, but it kept going. And it kept going. And finally I thought, it's going to let me listen to the whole thing. And it did. So this was a few months ago. So this time I was listening to, I think it was the Gresham Chronicles. Maybe it was the first one. And The Widow of Larkspur Lane. So this is historical fiction. I know I said I was going to do mysteries, but let me just tell you the Scribd story really quick. So this was going to be for Series September challenge. One of the prompts was, you own it, now start it. So I have so many series that I own the whole series and I could start. So I really wanted to listen to this one. This is The Widow of a Larkspur Inn by Luana Blackwell. And it's on Hoopla, but it's also on Scribd. And I needed my Hoopla borrows for other stuff. So it said, you know, not available, but here's a preview. So I clicked on the preview and it let me listen to it. And it kept going. And I was like, oh, yay. Okay, great. And then I got to the end of it and it offered me the next one. And I was like, okay, let's keep going. I could have at that point gone ahead and listened to the third one. I think it offered it to me, but I thought, no, I need to, you know, I still have one other thing I want to listen to on Scribd. So let me just hold off. Well, so when I finally got back around to the other thing, it offered me the preview, and I thought, and it said, you know, not available till October 1st. It offered me the preview, and I thought, okay, you know, third time, is it going to work? It did not. It stopped at 25 minutes and would not let me continue. So I was starting to think maybe it's a glitch with Scribd. If you just listen to the preview, it'll let you keep going. But maybe it will only let you do that once a month, you know, and then at some point, you know, it stops. But that's just an interesting thing about Scribd. So if you have Scribd and it tells you something's not available, but it offers you a preview and you really want to listen to it, give it a try. Try the preview and just see, because sometimes it will keep going and it'll let you listen to it. It's worth a shot. Don't tell everybody, because if everybody does it, they might stop just doing that at all. But, you know, give it a try. And, you know, you don't have to tax it every month, but, you know, I would say really, like, if it's something that you just really need to get your goals accomplished and there's nothing else you can do, for sure, give it a try. Okay, enough about Scribd. So let me get back to the mysteries. I also listened to some, I read and listened to some cozy mysteries. I don't have a physical copy of book 3 of the Mrs. Polifax series, The Elusive Mrs. Polifax. Not quite as good as the first one, but still very likable. Mrs. Polifax is just a great female character. I would say not completely plausible, everything that she does, but still just a lot of fun. So go in with just a light heart and, you know, don't try to take it too seriously if you start this series, and just enjoy it for what it is. It's just a fun mystery series. And then also on audio, I listened to Knitting Bones by Monica Ferris. This is book 11 in the Needlecraft mystery series. I listened to this one mainly because the scavenger hunt prompt this past month for the Killing Time with Cozies Club, which is a Discord group, was to read a mystery or a book with a craft theme. And since this is a needlecraft series and I'm in the middle of it, I thought, why not pick up the next one? I love this one. I rated this one 5 stars, and I haven't rated any of the others 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. And so, yeah, this is my favorite so far of the series. It's about a woman who runs a needlecraft shop, and it had belonged to her sister. And in the first book, she comes to help out her sister, comes to visit, and her sister is murdered. So that's the first mystery. And then she ends up, you know, inheriting the shop and taking over and continuing to run it, even though in the beginning she doesn't really know anything about crafting or needlework, but she learns as she goes, and it's a good series so far. I'm enjoying it. And then in print, I read Shades of Earl Grey by Lar Childs. This is also very good. This series is growing on me. It first started out real slow, and now I am enjoying it more. I'm getting more acquainted with the characters. And this is book 3, and I really needed to get it read so that I could read book 4 for a couple of challenges. And I went right on, after finishing this one in late September, now on the first day of October, I went right on and started the next book, which is English Breakfast Murder. And I'm enjoying it a lot. It's very good. So anyway, if you've tried this series and you thought, it's kind of slow, give it a few more books. Give it a try and see if it doesn't grow on you as well. And I think that's all of the mysteries that I read. Is that 8? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8. Okay, that's it. All right, so nonfiction. Let's move to nonfiction. I wrote down that I read 9 books. Several of them were in print. I already mentioned the 2 books of the Bible. I've looked to see, I haven't had a chance to watch Oshina's TBR yet, but I don't know for sure if they're reading another book of the Bible for October or not. But if they do, I do want to participate in that. I did read a few nonfiction inspirational books, sort of as part of my devotion, and then just some other inspirational reading in addition. And then a couple of things that were not necessarily inspirational, but they were nonfiction. I sort of structure my day where I get up and I read scripture, I read my devotional, and then any other inspirational books that I have, I read next, any other Christian nonfiction. And then if I have any other nonfiction, generally I will read that next before I get into the lighter, more fun fiction stuff. I sort of do that because first thing I want to kind of, get it done. I always want to start with my devotionals first because I just believe that starts my day out the right way. And then the harder, more difficult nonfiction, the drier things, I will read next because I'm fresher in the morning. I've got my coffee and it just makes sense to do that. Later in the day when I'm tired and I don't have as many brain cells to commit to reading, that's the time to read lighter stuff for me. So that's just kind of how I structure it. But I had several shorter books that I pulled off of my Christian nonfiction shelf, and I just kind of couldn't narrow it down any farther, and so I just read all 4 of these. I was also in the middle of Dare to Discipline by James Dobson. Y'all know my kids are grown now, but I had picked this up at a library sale years ago, and it was stuck in my box of books in my TBR jar. It came up a while back, in my last draw, and I decided to go ahead and read it. It was very dry. I didn't love it. I do agree with most of his philosophies and theology, but the book itself was tough. There are newer versions of it, and I'm hoping that they have improved some. But I think he is a psychologist, and so this just had a lot of, all the sources, and it just read more like a research project and a textbook, and I didn't love it. It wasn't easy to read. For my devotion, since I didn't have a journey magazine for the month of September, I read 199 Promises of God, and this is just a little book of scriptures, and they're just selected scriptures that all are promises. So I read this 3 pages a day for the whole month, and then later in the month I decided I would read Galatians and John, so I also included those in my morning devotion as well. I also read a book I've had on my shelf since college. My college mentor from our church gave me this book, and I had never read it. How to Give Away Your Faith by Paul E. Little, A Key Guide to Witnessing Today by Leighton Ford. So this is from the 80s, but still very good. Also a little bit dry, though. I only read 3 or 4 pages of this most days, but still very appreciative of the woman who gave it to me. She was a very important person to me during my college years, and she was a resource. She was a person I could always turn to for advice and counseling, and I really appreciated getting that from her. So, and now, after reading that, I was like, I need to contact her. I need to see if I can even find her. Hopefully she's still living, and her husband was a college professor, and I think she was a doctor herself, but she wasn't currently teaching. She worked, I believe, at the church and was the head of the college ministry. I went to Oklahoma State University, and I went to University Heights Baptist Church, which is right near the college campus. And at the time, I believe she was the person on staff at the church who was in charge of the college ministry. Just a wonderful, amazing person. Anyway, a couple of other shorter books that I read earlier in the month. This is a little inspirational book, I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes. It's published by Hallmark, and it's pretty old, but it was enjoyable. I didn't love everything in it, but it was kind of a edited, I think the editor was Betty somebody. Anyway, it was a curated book of poetry and quotes and scripture, things like that. Who was it edited by? Betty Bishop. So Anyway, I enjoyed it. And then Just As I Am, The Life of David Ring, as told to Layla Gilbert. I read some negative reviews of this from people who really wanted to read about David Ring, but they did not like the biographer's writing style. I wasn't really paying attention to that. I'm just fascinated by his life. I have seen him speak in person more than once. I met him briefly, and he is a evangelist who has had cerebral palsy his whole life. I believe, as the story goes, when he was born, his brain was deprived of oxygen for long enough that is what caused him to have cerebral palsy, and he does not let that stop him. He's an amazing individual, and you can find quite a few YouTube videos of him speaking and being interviewed, and I would highly recommend, if you have never heard of David Ring, check out some of his messages. He is just really a phenomenal human being and has an amazing story. So then another nonfiction book I finished that I've been reading since February is Pioneer Girl by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This was great. I loved it. It's an annotated book. The annotations are really longer than the actual Pioneer Girl manuscript, but it's so well done. It's just really, really great. Lots of photography, and there's maps and historical photographs, and it is just really, really good. Very much enjoyed it. My family gave me this book the Christmas right after it came out, which I don't know now how long ago that was. I know it's been sitting on the shelf for a few years, and it was needing to be read. 2014? Have I really had it that long? It feels like, surely I haven't had it that long. Anyway, I've had it a few years though, and I'm glad that I got it read. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. Another really fun book that I listened to. This is one of the books on my BookTube spin list that did not get chosen, but I thought I would just go ahead and try to work my way through that list. They're all books I can get on audio. I listened to this, I think, on Scribd as well. So I did get in quite a few books on Scribd on audio, so that was good. Best State Ever by Dave Barry. A Florida man defends his homeland. This was funny, very tongue-in-cheek, but there's a little bit of truth to it. Just a fun look at Florida and some of the quirkiness that is, living in Florida. So it was fun. And I think that is all of the non-fiction, I believe, except for one or two books from that are related to Lucy Maud Montgomery. So I'm not going to worry about those right now. Okay. The next category is historical fiction. So I've already mentioned some of these. The first two books in the Gresham Chronicles by Lawana Blackwell are historical. I believe they're set in the Victorian era, late 1800s, and they are Christian fiction. I loved these. There's two more in the series. I'm going to go ahead and listen to the next two in October. I'm going to participate in the, I think it's called Journey Through the Bible. It's a Christian fiction readathon hosted by Katie from Paperbacks, Ponytail and Paperbacks, or Paperbacks and Ponytail. I'll leave her channel down below. It is an amazing readathon that she has put together with this really cool choose your own adventure chart, and it just looks so fun. Anyway, I wanted to go ahead and get started with this series for Serious September, and I listened to The Widow of Larkspur Inn, and that's book 1, and then The Courtship of the Vicar's Daughter is book 2. Both of these also counted for a couple of prompts on the Footloose Readathon, which I'll get into in a minute. This is about a woman, this first book is about a woman who, at the beginning of the book, has recently been widowed, and she has just found out that her husband was a gambler, and they have nothing left. Her lawyer does come back, or her husband's lawyer does mention that there is one piece of property that the creditors were not interested in. It was a rundown inn that they just didn't see any value in, but that's all she has left. So she takes her children and also has a gift of a little bit of money from a friend, and is able to go and live at this inn and open it up for as a boarding house, and it's just great. I loved it. I just thought it was fantastic. So anyway, I'll tell you more about that whole series later on. Then I also listened to Mrs. Lincoln's Rival. This was one of my BookTube spin picks for round 7, and it was okay. It was about Kate Chase, who is the daughter of Salmon P. Chase, who was a prominent government figure in the Civil War time. He ran against Lincoln for president, and at the time, Kate Chase was considered the belle of Washington, D.C., and so that's the reason for the title, Mrs. Lincoln's Rival. And according to this book, which is a fictionalized version based on real people, but anyway, based on this, it does make it seem like that Mrs. Lincoln harbored some resentment and they just, didn't get along very well. This is from Kate's perspective. So, of course, from her perspective, according to the book, she tried initially to reach out and to get along with Mrs. Lincoln, but was snubbed. And it was interesting. It didn't blow me away, but I'm not mad that I read it or anything, and I will continue to read more of Jennifer Cheverini's books. I love the Elm Creek Quilt series. So far, all of her other historical novels that are not part of the Elm Creek Quilt series that I've read haven't really blown me away, but I'm going to keep reading because I did really love the Elm Creek Quilts series, and, maybe I'll click with one of her other books. We shall see. By the way, the ones that I have read in addition to this is Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker, which, it was very slow, but I felt better having read it. I felt like I learned something and, that it was worth reading. And then I think I also read The Spy Mistress, although I can't remember what it was even about. Okay, so another historical fiction book that I loved. I read this for book club, and honestly, I didn't have much interest in this, but it turned out to be probably one of my favorite books of the month, and is probably going to be in my top 10, or maybe top 5 books of the year. This is The Girl Who Wrote in Silk by Kelly Estes. It's got 2 timelines, and the older timeline is about how the Chinese people were treated up in the Washington state area back in, let's see, what year? 1886 is when this novel opens in Puget Sound, Washington Territory. And I don't want to give away spoilers, but wow, I had no idea that there was that much racism involved with Chinese immigrants. So the 2 stories connected, and I thought it was a great book. I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. Another book I read, actually reread, because I was graciously invited to join in Kate Howe's discussion in her Follow Us to Fair Acre read along, and this month, the month of September, they were reading Storm in the Village by Miss Reed, which is book 3 in the Fair Acre series. So I reread it. I still had about 60 pages left in my reread at the time of the live stream, but I skimmed those real quick, and I was all set for the discussion. But I really enjoyed reading this again. I loved being on her live show and discussing the book with the other ladies. And if you did not see that video and you want to, I will link it in the description. Kate, of course, is the host, and she was joined by Chelsea from A Voyage of a Time Wanderer and Rainy from Rainy Day Reads. Angie from Literary Labors was not able to make it last month, but hopefully she'll be back in future months. Of course, there's not going to be a Fair Acre discussion video for October because Kate is the host of Victober, and everything else stops for Victober in Kate's world. So they're going to double up, I think, on one of the other months and finish the first 6 books by the end of December. So anyway, in light of Victober, I usually do something where I can kind of give a nod to Victober. I have read in the past couple of years something that was set in the Victorian era, but this year I think I am going to go ahead and read an actual Victorian novel. So stay tuned. I will try to do a an October TBR video pretty soon, but I thought I would just go ahead and get this done first because I was so into finishing reading goals for the month of September that I really didn't give a whole lot of thought to October because I was so focused on September. And then we had a hurricane. So, you know, you do what you can do, right? All right, how many historical books is that? Is that all of them? I feel like there was one more. I guess there was, of course, you know, the books by Lucy von Montgomery would count as historical. But I said that I had 6, and I think that was only 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I have already talked about it, but this one certainly counts as historical fiction. This took place starting in 1124, I believe. Yeah, no, 1135. That's when this book starts. And then the very last section, part 6, it goes from 1170 to 1174. So there you go. Historical fiction at its finest. And then the next section, the next category is middle grade. So, of course, I've already talked about Enola Homes. And I really feel like it's more YA, this later book, but my library still had it cataloged with juvenile fiction, so that's fine. Anyway, I had 3 others besides Enola Homes. I finished my Penderwick's read-along by reading the last book. This is my least favorite. It's got some issues. I don't want to go into it, and I don't want to give spoilers, but if you want to chat about this book in my Goodreads group, Lizziefaye's Comfy Corner, please do. If you've finished it and you want to talk about it and you want to rant about it a little bit, please do. And then 2 Newbery-related books. I'm so happy to say that I finally have read the last book I needed to read of the Newbery winners of the 1940s, The 21 Balloons by William Penney. I need to find out. If y'all know, let me know. Dubois. This was cute. It was whimsical. It was fun. It was cute. I was a little after midnight finishing it on, September 30th, October 1st, but still counting it for September. And so glad that I got it read. So look forward to a Newbery Winners of the 1940s video coming soon, hopefully. I'm going to do my Lucy Montgomery stuff first, though. I have several videos I want to get done as far as that goes. And then this one, I think, was an honor book from the 70s or 80s. Trying to see here. 80s, yeah. This is One-Eyed Cat by Paula Fox. I have read Slave Dancer by Paula Fox, which was a Newbery winner, and I found it much more compelling than this one. So I'm glad it was the winner. This was an honor book, but I didn't love this one. I don't know. I don't even want to go into it, but I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was kind of dated, which, it's fine, but it felt older than the 80s, and maybe it was historical even in the 80s. I'm not sure what the time frame is. It felt more like 50s, the story. I could be wrong, but it was about a boy who was gifted a gun. I don't know if it was a shotgun or a BB gun, but he was told he couldn't use it until he was a certain age. So I'm not even sure. I don't even remember now why he was even gifted it. Maybe another family member or a relative gave it to him, and then his father said, okay, but you got to put that away. Well, so he sneaks up into the attic and gets it in the middle of the night and decides he's going to go out and shoot it anyway. And so it goes from there. Anyway, I didn't love it, didn't hate it, but whatever. Okay, so then the 2 other fiction books that I read, this one, I don't know what this is. It's one of those books that was nominated for a couple of big awards, so I wanted to read it. It had kind of been on my radar because I've heard a few people just, rave about it, and there was a challenge on the Serious September board that was something like Talk of the Town. That was the prompt was Talk of the Town, and I thought, oh, okay, that's a good chance. It's autumn. The title is autumn, so it fits the Fall Into Reading Challenge, and I thought, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to go ahead and listen to this. I don't know what this was, really. I don't. There were a few times I sort of clued in on what was happening, but then by the end, I was just like, what? I don't know. It's Autumn by Allie Smith. There are 4 books, one for each season. I might go ahead and listen to at least one more just to see if I can catch a thread of something through it. But anyway, I don't know. If you guys know what this is supposed to be about, let me know. And then I think the only series I finished that was on my Serious About Series list, because I'm narrowing down to just a few left now. I've been doing great checking off all 20 of my series to finish on my Serious About Series list. This is The Summer of Lost and Found by Mary Alice Monroe. It's book 7, and it's the most recent book in the Beach House series. And I didn't love this. This was kind of a new age, angsty, set in the early months of the pandemic book. There was very little about turtles, which is what I loved about the first book and have really enjoyed about all of the books since then. Some of the books I've liked more than others, and this was probably one that I liked second to last. The one I liked the least was the prequel, because it was just trying to condone cheating, and I didn't like that. You know, I got why. I understood that. The marriage was horrible, but I don't know. I just didn't enjoy that that whole storyline. That was the prequel. This was set in the summer of 2020, and all these, you know, new adults, did I say new age? New adult is what I mean. These new adult age people are all in this pod, you know, not all the same house, but they were, you know, they decided they were going to be a pod, and, you know, so that they could be able to interact without having to wear masks and all that. And I don't know. There was a couple of different romance storylines. One was kind of a love triangle. Another one was like, you know, meet today, let's hook up, and then turns into an insta love. You know, I didn't love either of those. So, not my favorite book at all. This may be the last of the series. I don't know. But the first book, called The Beach House, was very good. And you learn a lot about loggerhead turtles. There was very little turtle interaction in this book at all. So, I didn't love it. But I had it on CD. And so I had started this before the hurricane, and thankfully, even though I'd neglected to buy new CD batteries for my CD player, I had enough. And so I was able to listen to a good bit of it here in the house on CD with my battery-operated CD player. And then, thankfully, a couple of weeks ago, my husband was able to fix the CD player in my car. So I was able to listen to some of it in my car as well. So yay for that. All right, I think I have talked about everything. So let me tell you briefly what fit for the different challenges, and then if you're interested in what I read and watched for the More Montgomery Challenge, that'll be in a separate video, as I've already mentioned. So the Serious September, let me start with that. There were 9 prompts. And the first one was, let's get started. So I started the Allie Reynolds series by J.A. Jance, Edge of Evil, and I listened to the first 3 books in that series. And the next one is Double It Up. So I listened to 2 books in the Enola Homes series. I listened to The Boy in Buttons, which is book 6.5, and Enola Homes and the Black Barouche, which is book 7. Book 8 just came out in the month of September, and I talked to my children's librarian, and she said she probably wouldn't be able to get it until October, but I do want to go ahead and get that as quick as I can and stay caught up with that series. I hope there's going to be more. It's a great series. Now, just a quick note, and I may have said this in an earlier video, but if you want to read Enola Homes, do start with the first 6 books, because at the book 6 really does wrap up a storyline. I think the author didn't really intend to write any more, and then the series came out and it just kind of blew up, and so she felt compelled to go ahead and write some more. The newer ones are great, but Enola's investigation circumstances have changed a lot. She was having to hide from her brothers in the first 6 books, and so there was a whole different set of circumstances, and they were great. So now the situation has changed, and it's not the same for her a year later, and so I don't want to give away spoilers, but anyway, start with the first 6 books for sure. And then the next one is Blast from the Past. So I'm going to count The Elusive Mrs. Polifax because that is a series that was first published. The very first book was published in the 60s, and I think this one was published in 70 or 71, but still far enough in the past that I'm going to count that. And you had a couple of options. You could pick a series that maybe you haven't read from in a long time, or you could pick something older, and I just picked something older. Then the next one is Talk of the Town, which I already mentioned. I listened to Autumn by Allie Smith. And I think it was nominated for the Booker Prize and maybe one other one. I'm not sure. I don't generally follow that kind of stuff, but I know I heard people talking about it back when it first came out. Then the next one is That's a Wrap. So we'll finish or catch up with a series. And I already mentioned Summer of Lost and Found by Mary Alice Monroe. And then Out of the Box. Okay, so the idea here was to read something that is out of your comfort zone. But I took an idea from my friend Mitzi from Mitzi Reads and Writes. And I listened to Anne of Green Gables because I have the box set of Anne of Green Gables. I've got a couple of them pulled out right now, but anyway, I have all 8 of them, and so literally I pulled one out of the box, although I did listen to it on audio, but still, you get what I'm doing here. Then the next one is You Own It, Now Start It, and I counted the Gresham Chronicles for that. Then is that just one more? Oh no, Now You Can Watch It. So I know I said I wasn't going to talk about the Lucy Montgomery stuff, but when it applies to the other challenges, I'm going to mention it. I listened to all 3 of the Emily of New Moon books again. I had read these in print years ago, and I also watched season 2 of the Emily of New Moon TV series and loved it. So then the last one, I didn't quite finish, but the last one is Three's a Crowd. So you were to read something from a trilogy. So I started Thrive by Kenneth Opel. This is book 3 in the Overthrow trilogy, and I didn't finish it, but, for all intents and purposes, you can double up, and I read this whole trilogy, or listened to it. So I'm going to call it done, and I'm still going to finish this, but I didn't finish it for the challenge. All right, so the other September readathon is the Footloose readathon. That was hosted by Lee from Dark Roots Creations. And her first prompt was 1984, read a book from the 1980s. So I discovered that One-Eyed Cat was published in 1984, which now that I've said that, I shouldn't have had to look up the date because I knew that's why I read this one. It's one I had on my shelf, but I found it on audio on Hoopla, and I was able to listen to it. So even though I didn't love it, it fulfilled that prompt, so that's great. The next one was to read a book that featured dancing or a prom or a performance. And the main character in The Penderwicks at Last, which is the youngest sister, loved to dance and danced her way through life. Dancing was her destiny. Each of the sisters, really each of the siblings in the Penderwicks, each have their own focus, their own thing that they really excel at. And so for Lydia, the youngest sister, it's dancing. And then the next one was small town setting because Footloose was set in the town of Beaumont. We don't know for sure what state. I always thought Arkansas, but Lee thought Texas. But there is a Beaumont, Texas in real life, but it's spelled different, and it's a pretty big city. And I looked it up, and there was several different ideas about what state the actual Footloose movie was supposed to be set in, notwithstanding where it was actually filmed. So anyway, I was going to read Promise, Texas by David Maycomber to count for that, and I did read half of it, and I'm reading the second half this month, but I didn't finish it, and I did end up reading some other things that were set in small towns. So what I'm going to officially count is Storm in the Village by Miss Reed for small town setting. The next one, there were several prompts that had to do with different characters in the movie Footloose. So Rusty was the supportive best friend. So for that one, I'm going to count A Knitting Bones by Monica Ferris. Now, in this series, our main character, Betsy Devonshire, is the owner of the craft store, and she's the sleuth. But she was injured and laid up in this book, and so her assistant and friend Gotti, or Godwin is his name, she calls him Gotti, he came and did the sleuthing for her. He came and consulted with her, and then went off and did the investigating, and then came back and reported back, and got his next set of instructions and all of that. So he was definitely a supportive best friend in that book. And then the next one is plot. So the prompt was to read a book where the plot was something to do with breaking the law. And of course, I listened to 3 J.A. Jantz, Allie Reynolds books. And so I can count any one of those for that. They are kind of suspense, not really thrillers, just suspense crime novels. The next one is Willard, who learns a new skill. So I'm going to count The Widow of Larkspur Lane, Larkspur Inn. Larkspur Lane is a Nancy Drew book. Larkspur Inn as that, because the main character has just been a wife and mother in an aristocratic family, and she really doesn't have any skills other than, being in charge of a household, and I think she says something like, embroidering or something like that. So she has to learn to be a business owner and an innkeeper, and she has to learn a lot of things. So I'm counting that. Then the next one is Wren, and you're to read a book where the main character is new to town. So she's new to town in that book because the lodging house that she opens is in a different town. But I'm going to count the next book, which is The Courtship of the Vicar's Daughter. There were a few different storylines in this and some different kind of romance storylines. And the male lead in 2 of the different romance storylines were both new to town. So we're going to count that for that. And so I say that because there are several main characters. There's a lot of different storylines. And so I think it's fine. Even though it says main character is new to town, there's so many main characters. I think it'll be fine. And then the next one was Ariel, and to read something with unapproved or forbidden love. So I'm going to count the last Emily book, Emily's Quest, because she is engaged to marry someone who is almost 30 years older than her, and I think that can count for that. Then the very last one was to watch either of the Footloose movies, which I did not get done, but I did all the reading prompts, so that's good. And then the Fall Into Reading Challenge, which for all intents and purposes, I'm pretty much done. There's 2 books I haven't finished that I'm working on right now, and it's a 3-month challenge. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my wrap-up for the Fall Into Reading Challenge now, and leave it at that. So the first one is fantasy, and that is one of the ones I haven't finished. I am listening to Rose Daughter by Robin McKinley. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's great. I love it, and I would have finished it, but we had a hurricane. Then the next one is Orange on the Cover. So I'm counting the first Allie Reynolds book, Edge of Evil. And then the next one is a mystery or thriller. So I read several, but I'm going to go ahead and count Shades of Earl Grey by Laura Childs, because that's a mystery. And then historical fiction, I'm going to count Mrs. Lincoln's Rival for that. For classic, I was supposed to read The Secret Garden for Elizabeth Tyree's Classic Children's Book Club. I didn't get it done, but since I did reread Anne of Green Gables, there you go. There's my classic. And then short story. This is also Lucy Maud Montgomery related, but this is the most recent that I know of, a most recent short story collection, and it is After Many Years, 21 Long Lost Stories by L.M. Montgomery, and this just came out a few years ago. I have not read this in print. I listened to this on audio, and I listened to it again on audio. I ordered this when it first came out, and at some point, someday, maybe I will read it in print, but I just wanted to have it for my collection. And now I have listened to it twice. And some of the stories, you'll recognize the storylines, but different character names, and they even say in the foreword that these were some of the early short stories that were maybe published in periodicals and stuff. And she went on and used those storylines in her novels you know, just change the character names and put those ideas into some of her novels. So you will recognize some of the stories, but just different names. The names have been changed. And then contemporary. So I'm going to go ahead and count the Penderwicks at Last for that. Because a lot of these were historical, and I didn't read a lot of contemporary this month. The next one is Leaves on the Cover. So I am also going to count an Anne book for that because, well, first of all, I was going to count Promise Texas because it's got the fall leaves. And then I got to looking at it and I thought, are those blossoms? Those might not be leaves. But one of the, if I can find it, one of the Anne books, here we go, that I read is Anne's School Days. This is just a scaled down version of a segment of Anne of Green Gables, scaled down for younger readers with illustrations. It is adapted by Callie George, and the pictures are by Abigail Halpin. And look at the fall leaves right there on the cover. Then romance. So even though I didn't like the romances in this, I'm going to go ahead and count this since I didn't get Promise Texas finished and I didn't really read anything else that would count. We're just going with that one. And I completely forgot to mention Autumn Amour. That was a readathon that was hosted by Scott and Becky from the Bookish Bryants, and I had hoped to maybe read a couple more romances for that, but I just had such a full TBR already. So Scott and Becky, my apologies for not fully participating. They did a different challenge each week throughout the month of September. So you guys, if you'll do that again, I will do my best to participate more, but I just didn't this time. Before I realized it, I already had so much on my plate, and then I filmed my TBR and then found out more about it, and anyway, you can only do so much, but still, I really wanted to be supportive and participate, and I didn't do a very good job of it. All right, the next one is Autumn Vibes, and so I'm going to count, may as well make this count for everything, Autumn by Ellie Smith. And then for nonfiction, I did read some, a couple of Lucy Maud Montgomery things, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and count this one, How to Give Away Your Faith by Paul E. Little, for nonfiction. And then science fiction is the other one I didn't finish. So fantasy and sci-fi are the ones I did not finish, but I did start. Thrive by Kenneth Opel. This is definitely science fiction-y. It's about, okay, I just cut out some because I realized as I was talking about Thrive, I pretty much gave away the whole plot of the trilogy, and I don't want to do that. Anyway, just suffice it to say, this is a science fiction book, and it does have something to do with aliens, and we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so I think that's about it for this video. Thank you so much if you've stuck with me through to the end. I appreciate it so much. And I will go now to some footage of the area around here and show you a little bit of the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. And I'll be back soon with more videos, I hope. Meanwhile, I hope you are having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you. It's almost 8 a.m. on Thursday, September 29th, 2022, and we've just experienced Hurricane Ian, and just wanted to get a little bit of footage. The crews have already shown up and have started taking, clearing the roadways, but we have survived. The power has been out just a little over 12 hours now. And it's still windy and rainy, but we are very blessed that we didn't have any damage, and we're just praying for those who did. We lost a piece of that tree pretty early on yesterday, and it fell over the fence, and then over here across, not across, but a branch fell, I guess, from across the street over onto our side, and the crews have just started out here to start cleaning things up, so I thought I better get out here and get some footage. We didn't lose much on this side of the house other than some palm fronds. Oh, there goes the chainsaw. There's the other side. Randy said this is really soft wood. We're not even sure what kind of tree it is. But like I said, this broke pretty early yesterday and dented the fence. But it certainly could have been a lot worse, and I'd rather have a dented fence than a dented house.